It's Hoffman Show on a Monday on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Ding. Coming up in just a little bit, our 53-player roster projection, although we are going to try to aim for 70. We know that obviously they will be bringing in some players from the outside, and thus there will not be 70 current commanders that are 70 commanders on, this time tomorrow. The 4 o'clock deadline now just under 24 hours away, but we're going to give it our best shot and talk through it all, and really the analysis is what you come for, not the actual list. So we will get to it all coming up at 4:30. 4:30, not very much time until we do our final roster projection. But first, it is the day after a Commanders game, and thus it is time for First and 10.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3, First up, 10 observations.
Just a good guy and just boom, put him right on the ground.
It's First and 10.
All right, here we go.
Number 1.
And the most important thing, honestly, from the Commanders game against the Patriots is not the Commanders and Patriots that played. It's the Commanders that didn't. It was fairly surprising to see just how thorough the inactive list was for a couple of reasons that I'll get into more specifically in number 2 and 3. But if we take an even wider view of that, my biggest takeaway from the game is I think it's pretty fascinating the Commanders treated this final week as many other teams are. So this is not criticism. It's not a, hey, they messed up. It's just an observation with no value assigned. That they don't really see this as a useful tool to prepare for the season anymore. Preseason has been so devalued, and the more teams that treat it like this, the more true it becomes. It is in some ways a self-fulfilling prophecy. But Logan put it very succinctly this morning when we were talking on Take Command. He goes, until you have game planning, you're not playing NFL football. And so because teams don't game plan at this point ever in the preseason, it gets to a point where the preseason games are really not that different from joint practices or even your regular practices. And in some ways, those joint and regular practices are more beneficial in terms of preparation than an actual preseason game. Of course, there is something to finishing your blocks, actually tackling to the ground. There's a skill sharpness that you get out of preseason that you can't get in practice. And I do think teams utilize the preseason for some of that stuff, which is why you have guys playing weeks 1 and week 2. Or Carolina took the method where they said, no, we're going to ramp up into the third preseason game. So guys didn't play the first 2 weeks, and Carolina actually played their starters this weekend. So there are different ways of going about it, but this all started from a tweet that I got from at DC Pac-Man, I believe was who sent it. And he goes, why did Emmanuel Forbes play? And I because I was on Twitter, I was in Snarky Brain, and I was like, duh, because he's a starter, and he's making the team, and that's not in question. But then I was like, wait, don't hit send on that yet. Like, that's why, but is it, I don't think that's the point here. I think the point is he's going like, why didn't Forbes get more reps? They want to get him more reps. Why don't some of the receivers get more reps? Like, there's these young players that clearly could benefit from the experience. So why don't you give them the experience? And the answer, the retort would simply be the experience isn't actually either that useful for the player or that instructive for the evaluator. And if you're not going to get a whole lot out of it and you're not going to learn anything new, at that point, you still have all the risk of playing a football game and in terms of injury, and why would you hurt someone that is in your plans for the roster? And I guess that's the logic. I don't know that I fully agree with it. I do think that there probably should be some more guys playing. Like if I was running a team, I'd probably do it slightly differently. But I also fully understand it and would be very open to hearing whether it's Dan or Adam or whoever is driving that ship, whoever's got the most information on that in terms of why they handled this the way they did. I'd be open to learning more and hearing more specifically why they chose to do that, and would be open to the fact that I'm wrong in that doing even having some of the younger players play more. Actually, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Number 2.
With that said, there's a couple of guys that I definitely would have expected to play that are healthy, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I guess you're 100% on the team. And frankly, one of them was a bit of an oversight on mine and Logan's part when we did our 53. And Anthony, I'll take the L on this one because, we didn't even consider this guy when we did our 53 on Friday because we based it off the Take Command 53, and that's Michael Davis. Like, obviously, he's making the team. I had said, hey, like, I don't know. He hasn't had a good spring. There's a couple other young corners. Or had a great summer. Like, there's a couple other young corners. I think it's pretty clear BSJ and Forbes are going to start, or Sainristil and Forbes are going to start, and then Mikey will slide inside on 3 receiver sets. But Michael Davis is making the team. So he's one of those. And then the other one is Jamison Crowder. And that one is less surprising to me on some respects. Like, Davis is kind of obvious, I guess, so maybe it's not. But I think that one's less surprising to me than it is a lot of other people. Jamison Crowder is their number 1 punt returner, and he hasn't taken a punt return the entire preseason. Why? Because they're that confident in him. They know what he can do. And as a receiver, he's just reliable. Like, they know what he is. And I think especially with the Dotson trade, you look at it and you go, okay, if they see Jahan as a slot receiver, how much different is Jamison Crowder, or how much better at it potentially even is Jamison Crowder with the years of experience he has in the slot? And clearly they don't see that much of a difference. I think they're very different players, but for what they want, apparently Crowder's the right guy. So I will not be surprised if this roster ultimately has 5 receivers on it, and it's the 5 dudes who didn't play yesterday. I think there's a couple other guys that have a chance, but there definitely could be just those 5. And speaking of,
number 3,
third observation from the game is that they didn't, it kind of goes hand in hand with the last 2. I'm kind of surprised they didn't play the receivers. Not because De'Ami Brown needs to prove his spot on the team, not because, Luke McCaffrey needs to prove his spot on the team. Simply because you had a chance to get more information on these guys to understand where to slot them. It was another chance in a game. And by the way, for as much as we said in that, in my first bullet point, if you will, or as much as I said, the more teams that do this, no game planning, not playing guys, the more true it becomes that it's not worth it. New England played their guys last night. You had a chance to go up against a number 1 offense or number 1 defense, and you didn't need to put your number 1 offense out there. You could have played De'Ami Brown and Luke McCaffrey for a quarter with Jeff Driscoll against the New England ones and seen how they handled it. No Dotson out there, etc. And that would have been a good data point to decide playing time. But they clearly feel like they have a really good assessment of where everybody is. They chose to not do that. I thought that was interesting. Again, I'm not going to sit here and arrogantly proclaim that they're wrong by any stretch of the imagination because they have more information than me. And this is one of those situations where I look at the information they have and go, I just got to trust them on this one. But it is something that's worth pointing out that not only did they not do any more evaluation, or did they limit the evaluation to the end of the roster guys, or not just the super lock starters, it's the guys battling for minutes that are on the roster for sure, but we don't know in what role. Those guys didn't get any time last night either. All right, that's our top 3 observations from the game. Next, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's because 3 plus 7 is 10, and it's 1st and 10. The next 7 have to do with actual players who played. We'll get to those next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. later in the show, Anthony, we can tell everybody what just happened in that commercial break. Just a minor heart attack of a tech issue. But it's okay. We're here. We're back. We're good. We're rolling. I'm in my account. I have all my notes. All the things are working. And that means, Anthony, that we can resume. 1st and 10. All right, let's get to it. The players from the actual game. Commanders 20, Patriots 10.
Number 4.
So the guy that everyone's going to want to talk about today, and for good reason, is Martavis Bryant. Big ol' 88 was big ol' 88. He got to it down the field multiple times, got a couple of pass interference flags, a couple of catches, including the touchdown from McSorley when he just went all big body on the slant. Like, it wasn't even pretty. It was just like, I am literally going to run up to the goal line, turn, put my butt into the defender, and be a huge human. And that is a skill set that you cannot teach. That was awesome. But he's doing it against dudes that aren't going to make the New England Patriots, who are one of the worst teams in the league. So I think it's important to remember the context here, that Bryant still has been doing everything that he's been doing against 2s and 3s, if not 4s, guys that are not going to be starters in the NFL. That doesn't mean that he can't, in practice, go out and do good work and progress. And now if he's going to be on the practice squad, potentially do it against Forbes and St. Juice, and if he's killing them consistently, then maybe he gets called up. So I would say right now, Martavis Bryant on track, not on the roster, although he's certainly done a tremendous job considering the time he's been here to give himself a chance.
Number 5.
All right, number 5. I thought maybe the two best players in the game yesterday, Phil Mathis and John Ridgeway. They were both awesome interior defensive linemen. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to find a way to get both on our 53 coming up here in about 20, 25 minutes when we get to the defense. Those dudes are quick. They're explosive. They made plays. They made plays in the run. They made plays as pass rushers. They have forced the issue in the way you'd love to force the issue. And I think that there is also a chance, and I'm going to credit John Kime for this because he's the one who said it, there's a chance that one of them gets traded. Ridgeway is a guy that's flashed in the last couple of years. Mathis is a guy that was a former second-round pick. John said on his podcast that apparently the Commanders have already gotten calls on Ridgeway, and this was, John recording this after the game last night, presumably, or first thing this morning. So there is definitely a chance that one of them doesn't make it because they are on another team, and the Commanders have gotten something in return, because ultimately these guys are 4th, 5th string guys. They are not getting a ton of reps over John Allen, Daron Payne, and Johnny Newton. This is the next guy in that rotation. But both of them have made a tremendous case to be here, and they just unfortunately don't fit the body type that Dan Quinn likes to use heavier of traditionally. He likes to use, for instance, like he did last night, KJ Henry as a 3 technique, take an edge, long, speedy, explosive athlete, and let's bump him inside on a 3rd down or in a 2-minute situation, which is even less reps for one of these guys. So I tend to think that they've got Mathis over Ridgeway. Ridgeway was awesome last night. Mathis was excellent last night. So just, for right now, hat tip to those guys, and we'll sort it out as we go.
Number 6.
Cole Turner. Man, that dude's bag stays mixed. The catch down the field from him last night, that's big time. The penalty, that's big time bad. The drops in the first half, I would say a couple things on those. One, I'm not entirely sure those are his fault. The first one's a really good play by DB. It's not a very good ball. Cole does a good job to get his hands on it and make it a fight. But I don't really put that, that's not a negative on Cole Turner by any stretch of the imagination. The second one, it depends on who was right. It's a miscommunication between Driscoll and Turner. One seems to be reading man, as Chris Collinsworth said on the broadcast. The other one's reading zone. And, well, if Cole Turner read it correctly, then that's on Jeff Driscoll. And if he didn't, that's on Cole Turner. But and that ball's thrown with 0 touch. It's just a flamethrower. Outside of Cole Turner, it's not great. But I also think when Dan Quinn said after the game, there's guys that were tight early on, and they played better in the second half because they played a little bit more relaxed, and they just wanted it so bad. I think Cole Turner falls into that camp. And so if they think that Cole Turner, they can get in a better headspace when it's not this hey, dude, your job is on the line today game, then maybe, or he learns from this and they think that's good enough. He's done enough in camp to make it interesting as a fourth tight end. I don't know that's ultimately good enough to get him on. We're going to play with the numbers here in a sec, but damn, that dude's got a mixed bag last night in that game.
Number 7.
Kaz Allen. Everyone wants him to be on the team except for me. Nothing personal to Kaz. He just doesn't do it for me. For all the, yes, do we know he's twitchy and explosive and there's quote-unquote potential, but he hasn't actually done it. Like, I've watched a lot of dudes in preseason that are special athletes that go out and produce. Rashad Ross, my era on the beat being number 1, right? Like, Rashad Ross would go out and make plays, and then when he finally got in the league, he had a kickoff return for a touchdown. He had a long touchdown. And yeah, he made a ton of mental mistakes and drove coaches nuts, but like, at least you'd sometimes go, oh, that's why that dude's on the team. Steven Sims, a couple years ago, the punt returner. Like, he'd show it. You'd be like, oh, that's why that dude's on the team, despite all the other stuff that drives you nuts sometimes. Kaz Allen has yet to actually make a big, giant play as a running back, as a receiver, as a returner, and last night was more of the same. So I'm out on Kaz Allen for the 53 if they want to keep him, developing him and try to teach him how to read blocks better and stuff like that and unlock his athleticism. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll probably put him on the practice squad, but I'm not putting him on the 53.
Number 8.
Noah Igbenogany did not have a good day at the office. I don't think it matters. Not number 19. You saw playing cornerback. Yep. Heck of a throw by Drake May on that out route for the touchdown that beats him. Like, that's a silly velocity throw. But you can't have that happen. You just make the tackle. They went for the pick. But also, we've talked about this. There's some routes they want these guys to jump, and if you get beat by the throw, then you get beat by the throw, and you're supposed to have help behind you, and there should have been someone else behind him. That should have not been a touchdown. There's a couple other plays where he gets beat in coverage, but he's generally had a phenomenal camp. And I think overall, you have to look at the totality of the practices, the other games. You can't let the last data point be so much more important than everything else. So I think Noah Igbenogany is safe, despite the fact that he had a bad day at the office.
Number 9.
Good for Cade York. Good for Anthony. We had a kicker yesterday wearing burgundy, well, black, but burgundy and gold in theory, in spirit, and he made kicks. I, for one, like that. I like the kicks that go through the uprights.
You like it? I love it.
Also, Logan, who's down on the field, obviously, because he's doing the radio broadcast now, he said the ball flies off his foot. So maybe they got their kicker.
Ooh.
Are we finally going to be able to take the TBD line off of the kicker in the roster chart?
I mean, there are some kickers out there still, though. I think they'll take their time.
I think it's definitely possible that they go somewhere else, but we'll see. Cade York, good for him. And you want to know what? My last one, Anthony, number 10.
Number 10.
Good for Trace McSorley, man. That is not easy to do what he's done the last couple weeks. Come in on a Thursday, and by 10 days later, you've played 2 games, and in the second one, like, you make a bunch of plays. And is it smooth operational NFL offense? Hell no. Hell no. He's running around like a crazy man. He's delivering blows. But, like, go make plays, dude. I loved what I saw from Trace McSorley yesterday. And Dan, talked about it in the press conference, how cool it is for McSorley and Bryant to connect on that touchdown, considering they showed up in Miami kind of basically together. And so good for Trace McSorley. You just never know when the end is going to be, and I hope that performance helps Trace McSorley stay in an NFL building, whether it's this one or somewhere else, that someone goes, hey, you're worth a practice squad spot. You're worth keeping around. We know if, God forbid, you had to play, you're going to be a freaking gamer, and he's apparently, great kid and is good to have in the room. So, like, that's a valuable asset to have in a quarterback room, and, you just, for a guy that was on his couch a couple weeks ago thinking his NFL dream might be over, hat tip and round of applause for the kid from Ashburn, Trace McSorley. And that'll wrap up our 1st and 10. We get back, time to number crunch. 53-man roster projection. We dive into the offense next. We are brought to you by Floor & Decor. Unbeatable prices, unmatched in-stock selection. Floor & Decor has more styles of laminate, vinyl, tile, wood, and stone for anyone looking for the right look at the right price. Your next beautiful space is at Floor & Decor. Right now, it is time to dive into what everyone has been waiting for. Not going to make you wait very long. It is the 53-player roster projection for the Commanders now that the preseason is done. A couple of quick just parameters along the way. We are going to do a 53, obviously. There are also two spots, and this is new, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about this. I don't think a lot of other people are aware of this, and I will shout out the listener who sent me an email about this over the weekend saying, why is no one talking about this? And the answer is because none of us realized that it happened, but I have confirmed this with Commanders PR. There are two spots available for players to go immediately to IR. So this in some ways could wind up as many as a 55, unlike in years past when, say, a Jordan McGee would have to go on the 53 for 24 hours before being put on IR, risking another player. That will affect, well, Jordan McGee's position, at least in this projection. I don't know that it's actually gonna affect that, but we'll talk about it with a couple of injured guys when we get there. The other thing is we are going to try to name a practice squad the best that we can. We know that there will be waiver claims and outside players. I don't know the other 31 rosters well enough to project claims and who's going to get cut. I'm trying to do this the best I can for the Commanders. So we realize that this roster will not be 100% correct because we couldn't possibly project a 100% correct one. Adam Peters today couldn't project a 100% correct roster by Friday because he doesn't know who's going to become available at other places. But we're going to do our best. We're going to see how it goes. And really, friends, the journey is about what you do along the way. And that, AKA, come for the analysis, not just the spreadsheet. Although we are going to put up an on-demand version of this with a spreadsheet later on. Unfortunately, we can't share the screen right now with our current setup. But if you're watching on-demand on YouTube later, we will have a version of this that has the spreadsheet with it being edited in real time. Anything else on the housekeeping front, Anthony?
I think all bases are covered. Let's get it.
All right, let's do it. QB1, Jaden Daniels.
Yes, sir.
Hooray! QB2, Marcus Mariota. Hooray! Did I spell Mariota right? Mariota. Okay, good. Excellent. Do you think Jeff Driscoll has done enough to be a QB3 / do you want three roster spots spent on quarterbacks?
I don't think we need three.
I agree. I think as long as Driscoll or Hartman makes it, I'm okay. And frankly, if I lose Jeff Driscoll, that kind of sucks. But if they get to Jeff Driscoll in the season and they've already lost Jaden and lost Marcus Mariota, at that point, please tank for draft picks.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, if this team was trying to compete for this year, or if, God forbid, they are, 3 games above 500 and Jaden gets hurt going into week 10 and it's a 2-week injury and Marcus got hurt in practice or something silly and they need to stay afloat, yeah, I'll wish they had Jeff Driscoll. But there's also a really good chance they can get Jeff Driscoll to practice squad. So I'm going to go ahead and put not only Jeff Driscoll on practice squad, and I'm going to hope that that's the case, but I'm going to put Sam Hartman there as well. And by the way, these first 6 practice squad spots, I've got them starred because there are 6 spots that have basically no restrictions. So anybody that's a vet, we're going to put in these 6 spots. I don't know that we're going to need all 6, but just for simplicity, I'm not going to go any further into the practice squad rules right now, but that's that. Okay, running back. I'm going to go with 3, definitely. And the 3 definites are Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, and Jeremy McNichols. I think McNichols, obviously, he's been RB3 the entire time. The other thing is, man, last night that run he had out to the left side where he lowered the shoulder, I'm like, that just seals your fate as a Commander, young man. The physicality, gotta love it. Physicality, versatility, he's a Commander.
Yeah, I like 3 running backs for us. I would have wanted to see. Oh, we're talking about practice squad too, though, right?
Yes, eventually. Like, we have to decide if there's anybody else we want on the active roster first.
Oh,
but
yeah,
yes.
I'm good with 3. Yeah, three is fine.
Okay, then you get to practice squad. This is where it gets interesting. Chris Rodriguez, Michael Wiley, I think those are the names that we're probably making cases for.
Yep.
And I would honestly like to keep both of them.
Yep.
I'm going to put Chris Rodriguez up here because this is I guess he was a rookie last year, so he can actually go down here. And rookie Michael Wiley can go there as well. Okay, so we have gone short at 2 positions so far, and I will say
Very important.
This is something that I think we're going to do on the entirety of the offense. So we'll talk about that more because I do think that the way some of the roster mechanics are going to work and who they want to add potentially, I think I'd rather keep heavy on defense, search in the waiver wire for some offensive guys, potentially tight end, wide receiver. We'll get to it. And then also not put – like I want to let other teams fill up on some waiver claims and some other guys they've signed before putting a couple of players out in to the pool to see if I can sneak them back onto the practice squad because other teams have already filled them when they would have maybe taken our guy instead. All right, so you want to go tight end or wide receiver next?
Let's do tight end first and then get to wide receiver because, man.
Okay, so tight end, I'm going to put 3 spots, and then we can talk about a 4th. But for sure, we got Zach Ertz. For sure, we have Ben Sinnott. And for sure, we have John Bates. I think that there are 2 guys in consideration for tight end 4. Yes. And I know everyone's like, wait, what? Cole Turner. Colson Yankoff has been really, really solid on special teams, like one of their better special teams guys. And he has done enough at tight end to be like, I think he's playable. I also am very confident Colson Yankoff can get to practice squad because he was an undrafted free agent. Turner, I'm slightly less confident, but I also don't know based off the preseason games where he struggled that anyone who's seen not practice is going to watch Cole Turner, a 5th-round pick from the Ron Rivera era, a couple of years into his career, who hasn't been able to crack any kind of production, and be like, gotta have that, dude. So I think you could probably get both of them to the practice squad if you really wanted to. And then it comes down to, do you want to do that, or do you actually want one of these guys on your roster for game day for all the 2 tight end sets? Both of them play teams. On down the list of reasons why you'd want one of them on your roster.
I'm in favor of keeping a 4th.
I think I am as well.
That 4th is Cole Turner, but
are you sure?
That's who I would.
It does seem like he's.
I would
ahead.
lean towards him, but also for the reason you just said, we can get Colson to the P squad, and if we got to move one up, move one down, I think that's where we would go. But again, I will still give Cole Turner the edge because the experience. He is a big target. He has shown he can catch. I guess if the ball is right there on him. As opposed to
the second play he makes, or the play he makes in the second half last night is sick.
Yeah, 25 yard. That was tough.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think you're probably right. Although there's a part of me that just this is where my rebel instincts want to take over, and I shouldn't do that. I should just do the thing that's probably more logical. And Turner was ahead of him on the depth chart, clearly going into the game last night. So there is that. Yeah. All right, wide receiver, Terry McLaurin. Then you have De'Ami Brown.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Olamide Zaccheaus. You have Luke McCaffrey. And you have Jamison Crowder. And that was a bit of a surprise last night. He's healthy. He was a scratch. He's making the team. The question is, do we need
a 6th?
A 6th.
Yes, we do.
Okay, here's my question then.
Okay.
Who is it?
Byron Pringle.
Okay, so this is who my 6th would be. I will say they re-signed Byron Pringle, who was available for anyone to sign 2 weeks ago. So if they wanted to get him to practice squad, I do think they could. I also don't know how hard it would be. Like, how much are you really losing from Pringle to Rosemy Jack-Saint? That is kind of the hard thing here.
Maybe veteran experience. The dude is
Yeah.
a proven vet. He's coming from, a Super Bowl winning franchise.
I would probably have Pringle on. I also would say he's probably the first guy that might get waived if there's another veteran receiver that gets cut and becomes available.
Okay.
So then you get to the wide receivers on the practice squad. Martavis Bryant, I'm going to put on in one of these veteran spots.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? I think Jack-Saint.
I
For
like
sure.
Jackson too.
I think Tinsley had a nice game last night.
Yeah, he did. Where do we put Kaz Allen, or does he just get cut?
That's a
completely?
good question. Because I think a lot of projections that I've seen have Kaz Allen on because they've talked so highly of him. I think he had to make a play, and he didn't.
Do nothing.
So I think he winds up on.
Okay.
I think Jack-Saint is hyphenated, by the way, so for whatever that's worth, do that. See, this is the hard part of, like, Tinsley, Davion Davis, Bryson Tremaine. Like, I can make arguments for all these guys. How many of a 17-player practice squad are they going to keep?
I think you keep Tremaine over Jack Saint.
I don't know, man. Like,
I guess.
Bryson's been really good, but
Yeah, he ain't make a play yesterday.
he didn't
either,
make
though.
any plays in the preseason actual games.
Yeah.
This is tough. I don't want to spend too much time on practice squad guys, but I am going to say I'm going to go ahead and go running back Kaz Allen.
Okay.
But then if that's the case, are you keeping Chris Rodriguez and Michael Wiley and Kaz Allen? Or is C-Rod toast?
Can we come back to the P squad after we do the defense?
Yes, we can. All right, so if that's the case,
There's going to be some tough cuts.
yes, for sure. Okay, then we got the O-line, and then we got a commercial break, and then we're going to have to speed through the defense because there's never enough time to do anything on this radio show. Let's go to Brandon Coleman, if the host didn't talk so much. Brandon Coleman, Sam Cosme, Tyler Biadish. Then we have at left guard Nick Allegretti. And then we have, I guess I should have
Wiley.
done Andrew Wiley there. And Brandon Coleman there. Then I'm going to say we know that the swing tackle is Cornelius Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get fun. I think Chris Paul's on the team.
Man, he is. He looked solid yesterday. I'm not going to say he looked, the greatest, but he looked really comfortable out there.
He does look really good at tackle, which also to me means Trent Scott's not making it. He's hurt, though. I don't know whether they'll IR him, designate him to return, so I'm going to leave that roster spot free. But actually, you know what? I'm going to put one of these. I'm going to put Trent Scott over here. I don't know the severity of his injury, but we're just for right now so we don't forget about him.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Dieter, veteran. He's been their backup center all camp long. I don't think they're going to switch on that. And then is there another guy?
Not another lineman that just jumps out. I think Trent Scott was the other guy.
See, to me, this is when you get into, like, okay, who do you put on P squad and do you trust those guys? I would say like a Ricky Stromberg. I would hope. Like, he was a third-round pick last year.
Yeah.
So there's probably going to be one or two more. Oh, I know the other guy. The best next guy has been Julian Good-Jones. But this is also a potential waiver situation. So I would say that keep your eye out for an O-line waiver situation that could affect that. That gets us to 25 on offense. I also don't know that I like that. I might want to.
24.
I might want. Oh, sorry. Yes, 24 because we're on line 25, but I have the position thing and the depth. Yeah. So 24 on offense. I feel a little better about that. So where do we make the tough cuts on defense? We'll do it next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, we've named our 24 on offense. We've loaded up the practice squad quite a bit. Let's get to the 26 we will have then on defense, or will we change it and go 27? Or will we add someone on offense? Let's get to it. D-line across the board, we know that there's going to be a lot of D linemen kept. Well, at least I know that on this very specific version of this roster projection because I'm going to keep extras. John Allen, Deron Payne, Cleveland, Furl, Dorrance Armstrong. Got those four as your starters. Immediately, then you got Johnny Newton. Newton's injury sounds like it's not a multi-week thing, so I'm going to give him an actual roster spot, although if he needs to go to one of these short-term IR spots, that would actually be very helpful in the long term, but obviously in the short term, we want him to be out there healthy and playing football. So Johnny Newton, the other D end that I'm missing that's a lock is Dante Fowler. And then you get to the fun. So we've got right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anthony, I think I'm going to keep 11.
Woo!
I'll explain why in a second.
I was about to say, because are you combining a potential linebacker, DN, kind of hybrid kind of guy, or?
If you mean Jamin Davis, yes.
Okay, just making sure.
So I'm going to say Jamin Davis is on. He wouldn't be the next guy, but Jamin Davis is on. I'm going to say that both Fedarian Mathis and John Ridgeway are on.
Oh, you're keeping both.
And then the extra guy, if you will, is Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, I like his upside.
I think Davis and Jean-Baptiste have both played well enough to. Oh shoot, I'm one short still. KJ Henry, and in fact, sorry, I'm gonna move Jamin Davis down here because KJ Henry deserves to be in the lock area. I think the likelihood they keep Mathis and Ridgeway is 50-50. I think Mathis is ahead of Ridgeway on the depth chart based off when they played last night. Ridgeway certainly played his way right up there with Mathis, but Mathis also played really well. I also know that John Keim said on his show that teams have already been calling about Ridgeway, so there's definitely a chance to potentially flip him. I mean, it'd be pretty sick to get, if you can get a fourth rounder for John Ridgeway, who was drafted in the fifth round a couple of years ago that you claimed off waivers. Like, all in all, that's good business, even if John Ridgeway is a good football player. And, he's someone that you want to have on your football team because he's good at football. But I do think it's worth saying that, like, both those guys have done good things. I definitely can make a case for keeping either of them. Jean-Baptiste and Davis feel both like projects. If I got to pick one to try to get to practice squad, I'm probably picking Jean-Baptiste. I know they drafted him, but they drafted him in the 7th round. And Jamin is a guy that I think, of all these guys that are potential waiver claims guys, I think that he is the toughest one to get to waivers because he's a former first rounder. There could be another GM that loved him in the draft that is like, I don't know what Washington's done with him, but we can save him. Let's use our waiver claim. Let's get him. Screw this defensive end thing. He's playing linebacker for us. Let's see what we can do. And I think that's a chance. And so if they want to continue the Jamin Davis experiment, I'm not going to say they have to put him on the 53, but I really think they need to put him on the 53 obviously they do to guarantee it, but I think even just a likelihood situation. So I know that's a lot of dudes. I know that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But I'm cool with 11 there because I have an extra spot. I know some teams only keep 9, but I have an extra spot. And I also think that, like, if you can put Jean-Baptiste on initially, you make a waiver claim on a wide receiver or an O-lineman, you cut him on Wednesday after all these teams have put their waiver claims in and maybe signed other teams and filled up their practice squads, made some commitments, then maybe you waive him and sign him back to your practice squad the next day. That's how I'm trying to sneak him through. He would be the guy, or even Ridgeway or Mathis on the way out. But that's kind of where we are, in my opinion.
I like it, but I think it's because we're one short on the offensive side. I think if we had 25 offensive players, I don't think we could keep 11.
Well,
But
that's part of the reason you do it.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
think
like it,
that you're missing. I mean, they're going to have guys that are inactive on game day, all this kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe Mathis or Ridgway winds up being one of those guys. But, and it's hard because Quinn typically likes some of the other, some of the longer body types versus the bigger dudes like Mathis and Ridgway. But I think both of them have earned a spot on the team. So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
All right. Bobby Wagner, he's on. Frankie Louvu, he's on. This is where it gets interesting, right? I think Michael Walker is on. I think that Dominique Hampton is on as a linebacker. And I think this is also something that is helpful here in a way.
McGee,
I think Jordan McGee goes to one of those IR spots.
and we need it.
So then the question becomes, do you keep Anthony Pittman until then as a fifth true linebacker? Because then you're thin. Let's say no for now.
Yeah.
Because guys like Chin can play, Quan can play in the box. Like, you have a bunch of dudes that can play down there. Okay, then you have corner. And we're going to go 5 of those to start. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 safeties potentially. We'll see. One of these might turn into an extra corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know Emmanuel Forbes Jr. is making the team. We know, I'm just going to put BSJ, Benjamin St. Juste. Michael Davis, should have had him on the whole time. That's a bad job out of us. Michael Davis is on. Then we got Mike Sainer still is on. I still think, despite last night, Noah Igbenogany is on. And then, honestly, I'm going to skip ahead here a sec. I think the competition is between Tariq Castro-Fields and Derek Forrest. And I would lean towards Castro-Fields right now for special teams value and extra outside corner depth.
I like it.
All right.
I like it then.
Tariq Castro.
I really am a big fan of Derek Forrest, though.
Yeah, I hate that because I really like Defoe. But unfortunately, I just don't realistically think that he's going to make it. And then you have, over on the practice squad side, I'm going to, obviously we don't need some of these veteran spots anymore, so I'm just going to go say Chigozie, Anusium winds up being there just, for keeping track. Safety, you then have Quan Martin. You have Jeremy Chin. You have Percy Butler. You have
Jeremy Reeves.
Jeremy Reeves.
Then T.O.
Tyler Owens. Tyler Owens. An easy name to spell. Tressway. Tyler Ott. And then I'm going to put Cade York down.
Oh.
I think there's definitely a chance it's not Cade York, but I'm going to put Cade York down as the kicker, and that's it. The only other note that I'll make on the practice squad, we've now filled quite a bit of it, we didn't really do as much on the defensive side, which leaves room for a couple of extra linemen if you want to go deeper at wide receiver. Hagai Ndubisi is worth pointing out. He is their international pathway player, and the 17th practice squad spot is only for an IPP guy. So he will definitely make it there unless they can find another international player to bring in. But there's one spot reserved for that. So that's a 53 plus about another, 12, 13 on the practice squad. Certainly, if you want, let me know on Twitter or in the YouTube comments or whatever, if you thought we forgot someone on the practice squad, wanted to make sure we got the 53 in. But that's it. Two quarterbacks, 3 running backs. We went with 4 at tight end and wound up sticking with it. 6 receivers, maybe 1 short on the O-line compared to what some people might do. Heavy at D-line for now, but definitely watch for roster moves and some of the last most notable cuts. Derek Forrest, Michael Wiley, Kaz Allen. Tough cuts, but guys that I think you can get onto the practice squad and could certainly play, because the other thing to remember is you got 3 free call-ups for a guy essentially every single week. So you can have those guys come up and play multiple times. If you want to put a game plan in 1 week for Kaz Allen, you get a free call-up. You actually get 3 of them. So the way the roster rules now are really, really beneficial to not only help you adjust week by week based off injuries or anything else, just game plan, strategic. If you got small corners, maybe you call it Martavis Bryant. I don't know. But it's also just, it's like 300 extra NFL jobs. And it's good for the game because it allows these guys to develop all year round and not just have to wait. Like you get cut in August and then maybe you get signed again in April and you go through a 90-man process through the summer and you try to get better and eventually maybe 3 years in you make a team. And like those are great stories. But that process can get sped up now because you got more guys in the building, more guys getting coached, and that's good for the health of the game overall. All right, that's our 53-man roster projection. We'll talk about it with Michael Phillips next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show, Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well if you like at the Team 980. Okay, we're just after 5 o'clock. Actually, we're farther than we should be after 5 o'clock because the host is very slow at doing a roster projection. He likes to talk too much. But that's okay. Michael Phillips is a patient man, but it's time for Not My Beat. No, that's the wrong button. We don't want to do that. Michael would be excellent for Real Things. At some point, we'll have Michael Phillips guest host Real Things. This is the segment.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Michael, welcome to the Monday edition of the Well-Oiled Machine.
It sounds like my program all of a sudden. I'm stopping and I'm starting and we're turning. I'm driving my producer nuts. Let's talk about the Dow. Let's talk about this. Then we spent 5 minutes talking about the astronauts who are stranded in space.
What is up with the act? We shouldn't go down that rabbit hole. I do want to know if you want to call back in tomorrow and talk about the maybe. Well, tomorrow they got the roster cut at 4 o'clock. You want to call back in Wednesday and talk about the astronauts? Buddy, I am down because I want to know what's up with the astronauts. But
Craig, they're going to be there till February. We got time.
That's a great point. I mean, for us, not necessarily for them. Okay, Michael, first before we get to the football, I did not attend the game last night. You did. Of course, Michael, 910 The Fan down in Richmond, 10 a.m. to noon. Also cosplays a sports writer, something he used to do for real. But he was on the AP beat last night for Wino. So you were at Commanders Field. You got to see the upgrades. You got to see the new stuff. You got to see the things that they fixed to try to make it less of a dump. How is Commanders Field for 2024? What have they actually been able to do?
Yeah, it's cool that they put a lot of money into stuff that will not give them any return at all. I think that's a thing that immediately distinguishes them, in my opinion, from the past regime, is, they put in new carpets and repainted the walls and, fixed some cosmetic stuff where that will never make them $1. Like, people who come are going to come and the people who don't come are still going to not come. But it's just a little nicer. You just feel a little better like, oh, this isn't a dump. Like, this is a spruced up dump. It's not the Motel 6, it's the Holiday Inn now. And you're like, all right, we took a little step up. We're not where we need to be at all, but we took a little step up in the world. It feels nice, and I appreciate that. And I know, we'll talk about 2030. They're going to be there for 6 more years. That's a lot of football. And so certainly the investments are not unjustified from that perspective. But you wouldn't blame them if they went all in on the new place and just started ignoring, the FedEx, Commanders Field, whatever we're calling it now. But they didn't. They spruced it up. It's nice.
Yeah, and I will give Josh Harris a lot of credit too, not just for opening up his very, very large wallet, but I loved what he said about this yesterday. He goes, the question was basically like, what do you want fans to feel when they come? And I feel like a lot of owners be, we want it to be electric. We want it to be amazing. We want them to have a great whatever. And he's like, I want them to feel comfortable. Because going to FedEx Field has been an uncomfortable experience for a long, long time. The product stunk. The place stunk. And while he has put in a lot of money and hired very smart people to fix the product, at the very least, like, it cannot also be a terrible experience because of the facilities. And while it's not going to be a great experience because there's only so much you can do with that stadium, the fact that he's like comfortable, that's his word, that actually spoke to me quite a bit and speaks to, I think, a lot of the things you just described, Michael.
Yeah, it's a fan base that's been through a lot, and during the woman who's the PA and stadium announcer, she did a Commanders fans. Usually say like the best fans in football. She said the most loyal fans in football. I thought that might be right. If you've been through all of that and you're coming back on a Sunday night for a preseason game, pat on the back. Like, yeah, you've been through some stuff, and maybe a little love wouldn't be the worst thing in the world in terms of emotions to provide.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Michael Phillips with us, 910 The Fan in Richmond. You can catch him there daily on the free Odyssey app starting at 10 a.m. So, again, not to be avoiding the football, but I thought the most consequential thing, the most concrete thing that happens relative to the football last night is the inactive list. A couple of names on it that were surprising to me. What do you make of the strategy to not only not play guys like Jamison Crowder and Michael Davis, who we thought maybe be a little bit more fringy in terms of the roster, but not play guys like De'Ami Brown, et cetera, who are fighting for minutes and roles, and really just leave it to the, hey, if you're playing, you might not have a 53-player roster spot on Tuesday, guys?
Yeah, I think there was a respect for the veteran guys. I don't know that I'm taking it all the way that they'll make it or won't make it based on the inactives. I think there was a respect of like, hey, we know who you are. The league knows who you are. You don't need to be out there tonight. They were very clear. You talk about consequential. I think the Josh Harris press conference is far more deserving of radio airtime in the number of topics he addressed and in just the fact that he did it than the game itself. I think from the Patriots side, the game was kind of interesting. Drake May playing a half, the offensive line looking so bad, Jacoby Brissett. From the Commander side, though, the one thing I loved, you had two guys, defensive tackles, Fedarian Mathis and John Ridgeway, who are kind of playing for one spot, and they both made the case for it, and it may end up being two. I don't know how your projection turned out on that. I just loved seeing guys rise to the moment and give those big-time performances when it really mattered.
Yeah, I put them both on because I think they earned it. And I think that maybe by Thursday, Friday, or next Wednesday, they might not both be on. But that gives you a little bit more time to maybe get one of them to practice squad. But I genuinely think that they both could make it. Obviously, we're going to find out a lot more about Johnny Newton's injury in the next couple of days as well. We were just talking about this, Michael. There's a new rule where you can put two guys directly to IR with the designation to return. So if that's a multi-week thing, you have to think that like maybe Newton and McGee go to those spots and they don't have to wait 24 hours anymore. So you can kind of get 55 guys on. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. Is there anything in terms of the roster guys on the bubble? I'm limit this to one guy for us to talk about for now, but you get to pick the guy that you feel very strongly he should be in or very strongly he should be out.
Oh, that's interesting. Feeling very strongly the in or the out. Part of this exercise this year is so many of the ins are going to be unproven talent that it's hard to go to bat for some of these veteran guys who have been around 3-4 years and don't have the production to show it, right? That, this is a team that's very much still building and is going to go young. I am intrigued. I won't weigh in either way because it's an unknown. But at quarterback, is Marcus Mariota hurt or not? I think is a very legitimate question, and that the legitimacy of that question probably decides if Jeff Driscoll's on the 53 or not, which makes it a $350,000 groin injury for Jeff Driscoll in terms of the swing between the practice squad and the 53 salary. That's of consequence to him personally, and I would imagine his family. But more broadly speaking, that's a roster spot for somebody downwind. I continue to be intrigued by the battle at safety. Derek Forrest, I don't think, did himself a lot of favors last night. I'm not prepared to go full hot take here and say he should be out, but I don't know that he's for sure in.
No, we just had him out. Tyler Owens is for sure in. I think Revo's in, but I think it's down to Defoe and Castro Fields for one spot, and whether they want to go corner or safety, how much they value each guy's special teams value. Like I think that's kind of one spot that's on the line. I'll give you mine, Michael. I feel very strongly that Kaz Allen shouldn't make the team. I just think that if you're a guy that's supposed to make the team because you make explosive plays, you should have had to have made one explosive play. Thoughts?
It's a fair standard. The Hoffman standard, put it up to the gold standard, the Monroe Doctrine, the Geneva Convention, the Hoffman standard. Great moments in history.
The Geneva Convention. Wow.
I went in way over my head there pretty quickly, and I couldn't find a way out.
Yeah, no, that's never happened to you before. I'm absolutely stunned. Michael Phillips with us, 910 The Fan in Richmond, of course. All right, so let's go through a couple of the hot. If you don't have a guy that you're like, I will stand on the table to either kick him out of here or to get him in.
I wish I did. It'd be good radio. Yeah, I don't. So let's roll through your list.
All right, let's roll through a couple of the ones that everyone's talking about then. Running back. Do you keep a fourth? And if so, is it Michael Wiley, Chris Rodriguez?
Look, I like Michael Wiley, and he had an indisputably great preseason. This is part of kind of where I come back to, like, I wish I were more of a hot take artist. Here's what I got for you, Craig. It's really easy to get running backs to the practice squad.
Bingo.
Neither of those guys are going to be poached. There's no strategic advantage to keeping them on the roster when they're clearly not going to get snaps until Brian Robinson or Austin Eckler gets hurt. That's what, like, I would love to have the debate with you. Who had the better preseason between the two of them? They both looked good at times. They both showed flash at times. It doesn't matter. They're both on the practice squad. They both make it to the practice squad. They both get elevated when they need to. That's the part of this business where it's like, I'd love to go to the mat for one of them, but they could both be on the practice squad, and that's just fine.
Yeah, so that's actually where it gets interesting, though, for me with Kaz Allen to bring it all together. I backdoored Kaz Allen in this conversation because he's a running back now. Are you really going to have 3 of your 17 guys being on practice squad? 3 of 16, really, because the last practice squad guy is your international pathway player. Are you really going to have 3 of 17 be running backs? Like, that seems like a lot. So, it does become kind of interesting in doing some of that stuff of who they want to keep around and develop. I'd personally keep Wiley for sure. Like, of the 3, he's my number 1 seed because I think he had an excellent preseason and showed, like, actual real vision, which is kind of, to me, something you can't teach, the whole making people miss thing.
Very, very good preseason. I will co-sign on that.
Yeah, wide receiver, 5, 6, who the hell's the 6th?
Yeah, and this is where I think Jamison Crowder enters the chat. Is there a return element here? Nobody's really tipped what they're going to do on kickoffs, how important are kickoffs. Will there be kickoff returns? I think all of that plays into this discussion as we go down the list here. Also, this is another one where we can have this discussion today, and then we can have this discussion again on Wednesday when they potentially pick up a wide receiver who gets cut, and we're already seeing some early names. There's certainly the chance that I think 6 is the number, and number 6 is a placeholder for a guy who they get off the waiver wire as opposed to a guy who's actually on this team.
I tend to agree with you, and I think that Crowder, like Dan Quinn basically said last night, if you're healthy and you didn't play, like there's a couple guys that weren't healthy, and that's why they didn't play. Trent Scott. But like Crowder's healthy. He didn't play. Jameson Crowder's on the football team. Tight end. Everyone's kept an eye on Cole Turner. He had another mixed bag last night. Colson Yankoff has quietly been really, really good. I tend to think that they'll keep 4 because they want to do a lot of multi-tight end stuff. They don't want to overload Zach Ertz. And Turner and Yankoff both play special teams. The question is, which one is it?
This is great radio because it's just us agreeing with each other back and forth. Yeah, I think they keep 4 as well. I think there's a lot of 2 tight end sets coming, and that is to provide extra protection and help for Jaden Daniels, right? I think John Bates is going to get more snaps than people think he's going to get because he can block and he can carve out some running lanes for the quarterback. I think those things matter. The other factor, of course, as you mentioned, Zach Ertz, you can't wear out that guy in week 6. You need to make sure you're pacing him for the full 17-game season. This is where you say coaching change. Certainly with the last staff, Cole Turner makes it because he's their guy. He's not Cliff's guy. He's not DQ's guy. He's not really a guy in the preseason, and that's how quickly your fortunes can change in the NFL. I get the sense DQ is very interested in sending the message, show up every day, work hard, we'll reward you. Boy, that sure describes Colson Yankoff. Shows up every day, works hard, does the little things that need to be done. I'd love to see him make this roster because I'd love what it would represent as a team.
Yeah, and the problem is it also represents Cole Turner this preseason. Like, Cole Turner's worked his ass off. Problem is he's still Cole Turner. And, like, that, I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I probably just was, but like he played really, really hard, and still there's drops and there's questionable penalties, and he played so hard and gave it his all, and he should be really proud of how he conducted himself, and it still might not be enough, but I guess that's the NFL. All right, Michael, I'm tired of us agreeing with each other, and you said that the Josh Harris presser is more interesting anyway, so let's wrap up with this. What was the most interesting thing for you from the Josh Harris presser yesterday?
Well, I do think the headliner is the 2030 date because I think the casual fan isn't as dialed in as we are. And here's that number, and it's jarring. Like 6 more years at FedEx Field. But it's true, and I'm glad he's setting the expectations appropriately. Look, I think the name thing remains enormously fascinating until it's resolved. I think it might be a hot minute before it's resolved. He spent about a minute 10 answering the name question, and at no point did he say we're rolling with Commanders. I heard what I needed to hear in that.
Yeah, I do too, but I also think that he's 100% right that, like, the people talking about the name, the loudest group, or like one, it's a very, very loud vocal minority, but it's also your core fans. So it is the people that care the most, but within that, there's also a group of people that are like, if it's not the old name, then you might as well just run full speed off a cliff because I hate you. And Josh Harris, the one thing definitively he did say is, for obvious reasons, the old name is not coming back. So, like, you're just going to have to give up on that dream. I don't know why you're still having it, but alas, you're going to have to give up. So I think he's correct, though, that the bigger issue, the thing that will actually drive people being able to develop, like, lifelong bonds with the franchise is, can I go to a game and it not be terrible? Which will involve a new stadium, mostly. Hopefully they can get it to, I can go to a game and it can be palatable with the upgrades. But long term, I think he's correct. And so the headlines there, the 2030 date is fascinating. Do you think there's any way that it's before 2030, or is 2030 the absolute earliest, no matter the jurisdiction, no matter what?
I don't want it to be before 2030, because if it opens before 2030, that stadium's in the parking lot in Landover, Maryland. They can build a stadium right there as quickly as they want. They could start tomorrow if they wanted to. That means they've given up on RFK. That means they've given up on dreaming big, and they're going to slap something up. That would make me sad as somebody who wants them to aspire to greatness in this project. So if it's before 2030, I'm probably unhappy with the net result. And your Maryland viewers and listeners remind me all the time of how anti-Maryland I am. I'm not anti-Maryland. You can build it at National Harbor. There's a million places you can build it. Landover is an objectively terrible site for a football stadium. It just is. There are terrible sites in Virginia, too. I'm not partisan here. Dumfries was a terrible site for the stadium as well. I want them to dream big. They think it's going to take a little while to get RFK going. That's okay, because the end result's going to be really good. And to your point about the name, the hardcore fans are the ones making the noise. But I think for Josh Harris, this is about winning new fans as much as it is about satisfying the diehards. I just think Commanders is not a strong enough brand to capture a new generation of fans.
It certainly isn't right now, but let's be honest, if Jaden Daniels is awesome for 5 years as a Commander, then Commander Daniels is going to lead the Washington Commanders into their Commanders' future. Because you build brand identity by engendering positive feelings or negative feelings. And so far, everything about Commanders has been the Dan Snyder fiasco and thus negative. And if they can generate for 5 straight years positive associations of feelings with Commanders, then that's going to change. Like, the name objectively stinks. I'm not trying to defend the actual name itself. I'm just a realist about the situation and, like, how, like, is Bears good? Like, what are we talking about here? You know?
I want to like it. I want to get on board because it's easier than going through this again. But no pressure, kid. Jaden Daniels, it's all on your shoulders.
Yeah, of course. It's, whatever. I don't know. I would like a new one, too. I'd like something they can shorten into a cool nickname. Like, yep. There's definitely available for upgrade. It just is not as simple as I think people realize. But we'll see. And the one thing I will say to defend the honor of Landover, Michael, I do think that Wes Moore and, like, the county council and, like, folks in that area want to remake that in the way that Dan Snyder promised he would and absolutely never did. And I think Harris is much more likely to be a good partner there. If they do it in that area, it's got to be closer to Metro. Like, you can't have a 30-minute walk from the stadium to the Metro. That's not tenable. If you can move it halfway closer at least, or build some kind of extension off of the Silver Line that only works on game day. Like, I am not a civil engineer, so I'm gonna need smarter people to figure that out. But Landover itself as a site, if you upgrade the area around the stadium, Landover itself continues to grow, and you can get it close to Metro, is not actually as terrible as, frankly, a lot of other sites that have been proposed.
Metro gets us closer, yeah. It's just, watching the fans walk into the Metro at midnight last night. It's not a good situation, and it's a tough location off the Beltway for weeknight events and games. You think about it, they want to, they want to host non-football events at this new stadium. Can you ask a bunch of people from Alexandria to come out to a business dinner there on a Wednesday night? Or are they going to say, look, that's an hour and a half away? No. I'll catch the next one. I think that's where the Metro access is really, really, really big for that site.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And then again, where in the DMV can you get to from Alexandria? All due respect to the folks in Alexandria, which is why, Ted, it was a terrible idea. Okay, now we've switched topics. Michael Phillips, everybody. 9:10 The Fan in Richmond, 10 a.m. to noon on weekdays. You can also read his report from last night in the Associated Press, which is distributed everywhere. That's kind of the AP's deal. Okay, Michael, thank you kindly. We'll talk to you not next Monday because it's Labor Day and we're not working, but 2 Mondays from now, we'll talk about a football game, a real regular season football game.
My goodness, I can't wait. This kid's going to be fun. I don't think they're going to win, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun on the journey.
Hey, I'm here for fun. Michael Phillips, everybody. He's also here for fun. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, speaking of fun, it's going to be a fun night at Nats Park. And the Nationals are going to have Dylan Cruz make his debut. We go to Nats Park. Toby Altizer joins us next. We finally broke the curse of Anthony Haney. We will discuss coming up at 5:45, but right now we head down the street to Nats Park where we find our pal Toby Altizer, host of the Bust and Loose Baseball podcast. Of course, a fine Odyssey sports production. Toby, what's up, dude?
What's going on, Craig? I was hoping that I could give you some nice sounds of cracks of bats from Yankees batting practice, but they're already done. So maybe you hear some mowers and various things, but no crack of the bat.
Oh, that's such a shame. Oh, you're fired, Toby. No, you're not. The Yankees, they're all fired. So tonight, the reason we're talking to Toby, if you haven't heard, you lost this news over the weekend. Dylan Cruz set to make his debut for the Nationals, the number 2 pick out of LSU. Yes, that does sound familiar. Toby, how surprised are you that Dylan Cruz is making his debut before Jaden Daniels officially makes his?
Not really. I'm not. I expected to see him at some point this season. There was maybe a chance that if he would have been a little bit better in the minor leagues, not to say that he's bad, but if he would have been on fire, maybe you could have seen him a little bit earlier, closer to a James Wood timeline, like in July or earlier in August. But now, at this point in the season, I think it made sense to get him called up, and I saw that Jaden Daniels had sent a video over to the Nationals congratulating him. So, I think this made a lot of sense for this year coming out, and he's basically performed well at each level that he's gone through in the minor leagues, and he maybe hasn't dominated like we saw James Wood do, but overall, each level he's been at, he's been really, really good. So I think this made a lot of sense.
All right, so give us the scouting report on Cruz. Obviously, extremely highly touted. He went number 2 behind Paul Skeens, the pitcher who's already up for the Pirates and just destroying everything in his path. Started the All-Star game. How good is Cruz? Like, what should we know about him?
Yeah, I think you can do a little bit of everything. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch because he'll fit in with the base running. The Nationals are one of the top teams in baseball. He's actually been a bit of a revelation on the base paths with his ability to steal bags. He didn't do a whole lot of that at LSU. I think that was more so an LSU philosophy than him not being able to do it. And he's come up and he's run a lot. He's been fantastic defensively. He, profiles as a guy that can play in center field, but you've got a guy in Jacob Young that's been playing Gold Glove center field, so he'll play right for this year, and that'll be a discussion for years going forward. But he can be a fantastic Gold Glove caliber center fielder. And then at the plate, he's someone that can do a little bit of everything. He's not necessarily going to be a 40-homer guy like you saw with a James Wood where, he can just absolutely mash the ball. But he's going to be a doubles machine and a guy that just hits the ball all over the ballpark. And I think he's, in essence, a 5-tool player and that he can do literally everything. I don't know that there's anything that he is exceptional at, but there's also nothing that he's bad at. And I think he's someone that's going to be a stalwart for this team for a long time.
Toby Altizer, Bust and Loose Baseball. Check out the podcast for full coverage of everything Nationals, including much more on tonight's debut for Dylan Cruz. And, of course, they'll have reaction afterwards as well. All right, Toby, let's hop in a time machine here. The year is 2028. The Nationals are in the World Series. Everybody's really excited. Who's the best player on the team? Because you got Wood, you got Cruz, you got some other prospects that are either come up, guys like C.J. Abrams, obviously, who have been up for a while now. And really, I guess he was up for the entire time that he's been here. But Abrams, you got some other guys coming through the system. 2028, let's say the Nats are in the World Series. Like, what's the pecking order in terms of expectation of where all these guys pan out in their major league careers?
Yeah, I think that James Wood is going to be their best player. I would not be surprised if he's a guy that in the future we're talking about MVPs with James Wood. I think with Dylan Cruz, we're talking perennial all-star, maybe not MVP numbers. So I think the best player is going to be Wood. I think that the vocal leader, we had this discussion. It's rang true in my mind a lot. When James Wood made his debut, you had me on and you asked me, the final question you asked me was, what's the relationship going to be between the fans and James Wood? And James Wood's much more quiet. We've seen that at the major league level. Like, he's not very outspoken. He's not going to be very brash. But Nats fans are used to a Bryce Harper, a Juan Soto. They're different in their own ways, but they're very outgoing, whereas I think Dylan Cruz is going to fit right in right there. So, James Wood, I think, is going to be the best player on this baseball team, but it would not surprise me at all if you see more number 3 Dylan Cruz jerseys because he's going to be the personality. I think he's going to be the lifeblood of the team, and people are going to gravitate toward him just because of the emotion he's going to show and the leadership he's going to bring to this ball club.
So do you think that this might be such a stupid question, but since we're talking about it and the star power and all that kind of stuff, Daniels and Cruz are both number 2 picks. They're from LSU. They know each other. They have a relationship. They're about to make their debuts 2 weeks apart. Like, are we talking about these two guys coming up together in the way? I guess it's really not a stupid question because there's precedent. Like Bryce Harper and John Wall. Like, they didn't have the connection, but there was this moment in DC sports history where everything felt good, Toby, and it didn't quite turn out that way, although the Nats did ultimately win a World Series after Harper left. But, you know, this moment of like, okay, everyone's in a rebuild. There's hope. There's promise. The fact that these two do have an existing relationship, and we talk about Cruz's star power, is there something there of kind of this moment of excitement and looking towards the future and the possibility of these two young players that happen to be number 2 picks from the same school growing together?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, like you said, the connection there is easy, where you've got 2 number 2 overall picks out of LSU, and both are kind of tasked with turning their franchise around. And, you know, for the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, he's more so asked to do something that hasn't been done in a long, long time, whereas Dylan Cruz is more so asked to jump in and help out with some of the guys that have been brought over in that Soto deal and get things to where they were just 5 or 6 years ago. So I absolutely think that they're going to be able to grow together, and it's something where I think Jaden might be more the driving force than what Dylan Cruz will be here, because I think, like I said, that Wood will be the best player. But I think both of them also have a personality that a lot of fans here in the DMV are going to gravitate towards. So I think that will be a fun storyline to keep an eye on. And, you know, it's cool, too, seeing the crossover that you've had between the two teams over the last 2 years. You know, maybe they go further in on marketing the fact that you've got 2 number 2 picks out of LSU, and they're kind of the driving forces behind these rebuilds.
And then last but not least, Toby, because no one's ever satisfied with right now, who's the next guy? Like, we kind of, when Wood came up, we're like, okay, like, this is a huge deal, but also Dylan Cruz is right around the corner. Like, this is going to be fun. September call-ups are right around the corner. Is there anyone else that Nats fans or people that might want to check in on this team in September to get a little bit of a feel for, you know, maybe jumping back into the Nats pool big time next year, that they should be looking forward to the rest of this season, let's say?
Yeah, the rest of this year, I don't know that there's going to be any bigger names than what you're getting with Dylan Cruz. I think Brady House is the next big prospect, but I'm not sure that you'll see him this season. But I think, you know, Dylan Cruz is going to be fun to watch, and then James Wood. If you want a name to watch, maybe there's a guy like Brad Lord, who's a pitcher that's really emerged. Maybe that's a guy that could come up, but he's not as highly touted as a prospect. But I think this is kind of their plan to get these guys going so that, you know, next year comes spring training, they're going to be ready to roll. And theoretically, this team is competing maybe as early as next season, and those guys are going to be the driving force. So I don't know that there's anybody big time coming up the rest of this year, but I think Cruz and Wood and Abrams and those guys are going to be fun enough to watch.
It does feel like the hole in that plan is the pitching staff still needs to be built out far more. All these amazing prospects, all field players. Where does Mike Rizzo go to get the pitching? Are there some guys maybe farther down that are a year or two away, or is this, you know, maybe this is the winter we're in the Nats with maybe the learners not quite looking to sell anymore, and like, okay, hey, these young guys are up and we're ready, that Mike Rizzo dives back into the free agent pool and tries to bring in a couple of vets?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I think the guy that has been the biggest revelation in the entire system has been a guy named Travis Sikora. He was a third-round draft pick by the Nats last year out of high school, and he's looking like an ace. Now, he's only pitching in Fredericksburg. It's his first year as a professional, so they're kind of just going through it very slowly as he's coming out of high school, so they're kind of just getting him through a full year just to experience it. But he's been fantastic. Matter of fact, he was part of a combined no-hitter down in Fredericksburg a couple of weeks ago, and basically over his last month and a half, he's been looking like a real ace. Now, it's something they're going to have to continue to develop him, but I think you're spot on that that's the part that's missing. And there's maybe only 2 guys that profile as aces in the organization. One's Mackenzie Gore. He's already at the big league level, hasn't pitched like it yet, so they're going to have to continue to develop him. And Sikora, and like I said, he's still a ways away from the bigs, so they're going to have to continue to develop him. So I think, you know, if they wanted to spend this offseason, I think that would make some sense, assuming they're not going to go with, Juan Soto coming back to Nats Park and trying to lure him back, you know, with this series here and some of the fans showing him some love. But I think that's definitely the place that they would have to spend, because they really lack that frontline guy, but they almost have an abundance of guys that are 3 through 5 type starters, maybe fit in somewhere in the bullpen. So I think they're good in terms of that, but they do lack that ace. So they're going to have to find it somewhere, whether it's going out and spending some money, which they haven't necessarily done, or they're going to have to get Gore to pitch at a level like that, and Sikora is going to have to come down the line and pitch like that as well.
Seems like there's some options, though. Hopefully one of them hits. That is the hard part about baseball is very, very rarely is the sure thing, but Dylan Cruz made his way pretty darn quickly through the minor leagues, and he'll make his debut tonight at Nats Park. Toby Altizer will be there, and then he will produce a podcast, presumably, later this week about it. Just search Bustin' Loose in your favorite podcast app. Toby, enjoy the game, my friend, and thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it, Craig.
That is Toby Altizer, everybody. When we get back, before we get back to the Commanders at the top of the hour with our Pick 6, it's finally over. The curse of Haney has been broken. How did it all go down Friday night? Show, field trip, adventure story time next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we're presented by T-Mobile. Switch to T-Mobile, and you can get tons of benefits and still save on every plan versus AT&T and Verizon. Use their savings calculator to find out how at T-Mobile.com/switch. All right. So it was the night was Friday night. It is after we last left our heroes. Anthony, we're the heroes in this story.
Yes, sir.
I did the show at ESA. It was a really great time, and then you made actually a really good time to get over to ESA, and then we put it all on the line. It had been at least a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, so far that we had lost track since Anthony Haney saw a team that he was rooting for win in person. We're talking Commanders games. We're talking Mystics games. We're talking Wizards games. We're talking we took this thing out of state. He went to Indianapolis and Houston and watched Zaire Franklin, his best friend in the Colts, lose. And it just seemed like Anthony was cursed. We invited him to Washington Spirit games. He saw the real test was a game in which the Spirit were losing the entire time that Anthony was there, and then he left the building and they tied it. So they tied the game, and he didn't see it. So we asked Croy Bethune herself, the NWSL Rookie of the Year to be, who, by the way, notched another assist in her first game back as the NWSL returned this weekend. She is now tied for the NWSL record. There's 2 months left in the season, and she's a rookie. Not the rookie record, Anthony. She has tied the NWSL assist record, something that you haven't seen any part of, because when Croy invited you back, they lost again. They've barely lost all year. They're now second in the table. And the two games that are two of the 3 or 4 games that they haven't won all year, you've been there for. And yet, on Friday night, with the Sparks in town, the one team that has been worse than the Mystics this year, we figured this was an opportunity to see. Has Anthony just gotten unlucky with the Spirit, and other than that, and the Colts, mostly just seen bad teams play? Because the 2023 Commanders were not very good. There weren't a lot of wins to see. Same with the 2023 Wizards. Obviously, it's been a much tougher than anticipated year thanks to a bunch of injuries for the Mystics. So maybe it's not Anthony. Sparks were a good test. And Anthony, they did it. They broke the curse. Our guy was ecstatic. Anthony, you're allowed to go to sports again! Yay!
Almost tears of joy, Craig. That's how happy I was when the final buzzer sounded at ESA. And I'm not going to lie, you asked me, I want to say 5 minutes before the end of the game, whether or not, or with my confidence level that, the Mystics were going to pull it off, because I think they had created an 8-point lead or something of that.
Yeah, it was like a 10-point lead,
10.
although the Sparks immediately went to the line and hit 2 free throws, so it was down to 8.
Yeah. And then they hit another shot, so I'm like, oh, see, this is why no lead is safe when Anthony Haney is in the building. But the Mystics end up weathering the storm, and Brittany Sykes, that's who I really got to thank.
I know. I say,
man,
not only did they weather the storm, but this curse was smashed by our Syracuse sister.
yes.
Brittany Sykes, best player on the Mystics. If she had been healthy this year, there's no way this team is sitting at the bottom of the standings like they are. And it really happened in one moment. I'm trying to remember who the player it was. Oh, I think it was De'Erica Hamby. Drove. And B. Sykes came out from the weak side and just absolutely volleyball spiked her shot.
Yep.
Just one of the sickest, most disrespectful blocks I've ever seen in the WNBA. Just got it. And that was, by the way, on top of a 27-point performance. Sykes, by the way, super emotional in the locker room afterwards. She was presented the hard hat by none other than Elena Beard, whose jersey was retired at halftime on Friday. But Slim has been battling injury. Just when she came back, she got hurt again. It's really tested her. So on a more serious and more important, if anything could be more important than the streaks note, congrats to Slim and for showing everybody exactly who you are. Tremendous play out of her. But, Anthony, you can thank your Syracuse sister. The fellow Orange bailed you out and really led, along with a double-double from one of our other show favorites, Shakira Austin, to victory.
Yeah, she definitely did her. I actually texted her after the game. I said thank you.
Did you really?
I actually did.
Did she say anything back?
Yeah, she responded to me.
Did you have to explain the curse?
No, I didn't. We didn't text back and forth that much because I already know she had a busy evening and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
it was something
They
quick.
had to get on the road. They're in Seattle tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely shouted her out, and I told her she's really locked because we were courtside, and I want to say like it was one time like she was walking directly towards Craig and I, and she was just so locked in the game, like she didn't look at the crowd or anything. Because I'm like, if you just look up, you would have seen two orangemen like right there in front of you.
Next time we should wear Syracuse basketball shirts.
Oh,
I don't
no.
know that I have any.
Might have
anymore.
to some orange.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good call. We got to get Syracuse women's basketball shirts, and we'll wear them next time we sit in those seats. And then we'll be like, "Hi, Slim." We need to get Slim on the show when they get back on the East Coast.
Yes, sir.
We'll work on that for later in the week. But more importantly, the curse is over. So Anthony, that begs the question: football season. You got the end of the Mystic season. You got Wizards starting up soon. You got the end of the Spirit because I know you wanted to get back at Audi again. And God, they look good on Saturday. You should definitely want to go see them play because what an entertaining and good team they're going to be for the playoff stretch here, or the run to the playoffs, and then hopefully a deep run in it. Like, what's on your to-do list now? What games are you going to go see?
I got to check the Spirit schedule. I'm missing the Colts home opener against the Texans. That's the game I really wanted to go to, but I have a wedding to go to the day before, so I can't make it happen. So I can definitely, try to check the Spirit schedule and the Mystic schedule.
Okay. Do you have any Commanders games circled?
The Giants, they play the 15th, I know. What am I doing the 15th? If I don't have a football game, I will be there.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. If I don't have a football game, I'll be there on the 15th.
At your favorite local sporting event, look out. Anthony Haney might come, and you don't have to fight him. So that's good. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, our pick six. We picked 6 good ones on Friday to keep our eye on. How did they do, and how will it affect their status on the 53? We'll give our best guess on our guesses next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6:30, why have teams chosen to de-emphasize the preseason so much? We did a lot on Take Command this morning about that, as well as some obviously, obviously some guys that actually did play discussion. But we'll give you that at 6:30. Right now, just after 6 o'clock on a Monday, it's the last time we do this preseason version. Who were the 6 players we looked at Friday that we are most interested in for the Commanders-Patriots, and how do they do on a Monday? Well, that will do in regular season as well. And last preseason version right now, a Monday edition of the Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Alrighty. We picked 6 players who we were really interested to watch and we thought could be intriguing in terms of their effect on the rest of the roster. And Anthony, you started with
Number 1.
Martavis Bryant.
good choice.
To be honest, I think all of our picks were pretty good.
We're basically savants.
Yeah. I started out with Martavis just because, again, they signed this guy in the offseason. They gave him another chance. Dan Quinn, he also, spoke about his journey in the post-game presser. But being able to see Martavis go out there, catch a touchdown, all the, players surround him and, encourage him and just congratulate him on having scored his first touchdown in over 7 years was pretty inspiring. But also the things that he did throughout the game, he was able to draw a defensive penalty.
Two
drew
DPS.
So I think this game necessarily didn't seal his fate, in terms of, making the roster. But it did show us, he still has something left in the tank. And I think that's what Adam Peters and Cliff Kingsbury, Dan Quinn, that's what they wanted to see out of the guy. And I think he went out there and, he played solid.
I totally agree. I think I do not think he will make the roster.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if they took a flyer on him. And we're just like, we think he can do this against dudes. The problem is he's probably your 6th receiver, and does your 6th receiver not playing special teams actually wind up being active on game day? And so they could keep him and just make him inactive on game day. The other 5 are the guys that are going to be, up and playing offense and playing teams. And, if someone gets hurt, then he's on your roster. You don't have to call him up from the practice squad. You don't have to protect him. Because the other, one of the things that we didn't talk about during the roster projection is you have 4 practice squad players you can protect every single week where other teams can't poach them. But he's a guy that, I don't know, someone else is intrigued. Could they poach him? Could Dallas be like, we saw him last year too. We're intrigued. Like, I don't know. I could make the case that a dude who's 6'4", 210 pounds, a former first-round pick, and still has shown the ability to do some of the things that got him drafted there and was productive early in his career before his life took a turn. Now that he's turned back around, is worth keeping. I just think that he's also doing this against not number ones, and so you got to earn your way up. And in the name of competition, I don't think he did that in his time here, even though we did a lot of stuff right. He just didn't have time to climb the ladder. They didn't give him time to climb the ladder because there's other guys that had deserved it ahead of him. So I think Bryant's super interesting. I'd probably keep him around on the practice squad. I think having that body type to practice against is great, especially in a division where A.J. Brown exists. So with that, that's kind of where I'm at on Bryant. I think I think they're going to go thin at receiver, and I think the other thing to watch out for him, unfortunately, is like if another guy who's big and physically gifted winds up getting cut, they could also put in a waiver claim as well.
Number 2,
Tyler Owens. All he did was continue to be the exact same Tyler Owens that we saw at camp, Anthony. I think it's easier to move on if you want to from Derek Forrest now than it was before this last game, because are you concerned that, oh man, if Owens gets out there for real, like, are we going to regret not having Defoe? And maybe, and if you can keep Defoe around on the practice squad, like that's a really good, solid. He's one of the better practice squad players in the NFL. Like this dude was a starter 2 years ago, and he wasn't a bad one. But like Owens is a last line of defense. He's made a couple of touchdown saving tackles. He has been a monster on special teams. Like this dude's gonna not only make the team, at the very least on special teams, he's gonna play. And he's the kind of guy that if I'm Joe Witt Jr., I'm like, I might find a role for you. And certainly, he's an undrafted free agent rookie. These guys don't come in and become all pros or Pro Bowlers or anything, and he's probably not even going to play a whole lot. But there's a lot of talent there. And a year from now, even they signed Chin to a 1-year deal. If Chin is awesome, then you'd probably just be like, oh, Jeremy Chin is great. He's a former defensive rookie of the year. But like a year from now, if Tyler Owens has replaced Jeremy Chin and is the starter next to Quan Martin, like that's a plausible storyline with how good of a camp this dude had.
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to see him be consistent, and I think that's exactly what he did. And again, you're right. He did go out there and make another touchdown-saving tackle on the running back. I'm just like, good gracious. So the fact that you have a short tackler out there, he's consistent, he's adherent to the scheme. I think, he did just enough, or, what we wanted to see him do throughout the entirety of the camp.
More than enough. He's safely on the team.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Can't say the same about this dude. Anthony, your second choice was?
Casimir Allen. I had clicked over on accident. Yes, Casimir Allen was the second guy just because going into, the final preseason game, we felt as though the training staff moved this guy around throughout all of camp. He started out as a receiver or strictly a punt returner, kick returner, transition over to the running back room. So obviously they see this guy as, a guy that can be a playmaker. And, in this final preseason game, throughout the preseason, he just didn't make enough plays or any really splash plays. So that's why, he was our third guy in this pick six.
Yeah, you got Cliff last week being like, oh, this is a Deebo Samuel type of role potentially for him. Like we could see him taking handoffs. We can see him in the backfield. We see him as a receiver. And sometimes, like with Deebo, you do that because he can do everything. He truly can. Sometimes versatility is a sign of he's actually not that good at any of them, but like he should be, and we're trying to find a place. And that's kind of Casimir Allen. Like he's a twitched up athlete. He definitely made some plays at UCLA, but at the NFL level, the level of twitch you need is different. I don't know that he's got like NFL twitch, right? Superior NFL twitch. If you're just as athletic as everyone else, that means you're one of the, top 1% of athletes on earth, which is a sweet athletic thing to be. I would love to be that. So I'm not hating on it, but you're not going to have your athleticism let you separate and make plays to warrant a playmaker position. I just think if you're going to be a playmaker, you got to make plays. And Kaz Allen didn't make plays. And in fact, he had a fumble and missed some stuff. So yeah, I'm out on the Kaz Allen experiment, at least for
number 4,
a roster spot. Number 4, Javonte Jean-Baptiste. He was good again. He was solid. Like he sets a good edge. He rushes smartly. He's got a little bit of pass rush savvy to him. He doesn't get washed to the frequency that, like, say, Jamin Davis does. Is Jamin still learning the position? Jamin's obviously got some tremendous other attributes. I think they've made it really, really hard at that spot. I think that they're dedicated to the Jamin Davis experiment. I also think if they got the right trade offer that they would probably be smart to like, if you say, hey, a bunch of stuff has to go right for this to work out, or I can get guaranteed a whatever round pick with 1 year left on the contract, you might just take the trade and be like, hey, we tried and we wish you the best. We hope that the things that we taught you help you in your next endeavor on a human level. But when we did our 53, we had both of them on. We had Jean-Baptiste on, we had Davis on, just their heavy defensive line. And I'm okay with that for right now because I also think they want to rotate those dudes a ton. They want to use some of them inside as 3 techniques, as we saw KJ Henry in this game. And I think you'll see Dorrance Armstrong do some of that as well amongst that top line with, Dante Fowler or Cleveland Ferrell inside and Jamin outside or Jean-Baptiste outside. So they're, I don't know, man, like they've got that is one of the hardest position groups, I think, to divvy up because there's a bunch of guys that are pretty even I mean, Andre Jones Jr. as well had a couple of nice rushes last night. You're like, I get it. I just don't know how many of them actually wind up making the team. And for John Baptiste as a 7th-round pick, it feels like he could be someone who slid. Certainly Andre Jones. We didn't put him on the practice squad earlier because we kind of were trying to move a little faster through the 53, but he's one that I'll go back and add to the practice squad for our official list, if you will. But yeah, man, I would say John Baptiste is a guy that I have on, but if they try to sneak into practice squad, it won't surprise me. And that's not reflective of anything more than numbers compared to like his play.
Yeah, I definitely think he had a couple of good pass rushes. But again, like you said, like these guys, like I would say, would you say KJ Henry's probably above them?
Henry's definitely above them.
He had some really good rushes yesterday.
He did, and he's been consistently better. He was a higher draft pick.
Yeah.
Which again, like not to say that is indicative of like, oh, they have to keep him because of the draft capital. It's just like he's a better player.
Yeah. They also had
which is why he was drafted higher.
They also had him lining up at the D tackle, which was also interesting. So, looking at that versatility is also pretty inspiring too. So.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that John Baptiste, Davis, Jones are kind of battling for, in an ideal world, one spot, but we had it as 2. I mean, it also depends. Like, it actually isn't that hard to make it 2, especially if you don't do what we did, which is put Ridgeway and Mathis both on the roster.
And not keep an extra running back or
3 running backs.
Yeah,
we went real light at linebacker, just 4 of them with McGee being on IR. I mean, that's another factor, right? Is like if Jordan McGee's on IR, that's a spot. If Jordan McGee's not IR because he's going to be ready for week 1 or even week 2, well, that's a spot that you don't have available. So it is, man, these number crunches get real crunchy, which brings us to
number 5.
Cole Turner, Anthony. What did you see from Cole Turner?
Cole Turner, to be honest, I thought he had a bad game, but I will say in the 1st and 10 when you broke down, the drops, one might not have been his fault because he thought it was zone and he might have been correct, and Jeff Driscoll might have got it wrong. And then the holding penalty, that was really bad. But outside of that, the big catch down the middle of the field, again, showing his versatility. And I think that's ultimately why, Ron Rivera and them chose to get him. He's a big target. He can run. So he was able to, display that. But, again, I think you summed it up perfectly. A mixed bag.
Yeah. Something Dan Quinn said, I think it was Friday, and then reiterated post-game Sunday night, is sticking with me with Cole Turner. And I don't know how to apply it, but I know that it's relevant. So Dan talked about how we know there's going to be some guys that just like kind of grind their teeth because they're so amped up for this game. Your career's kind of on the line, which means you're going to stress out about every single down, every single assignment, every block, every catch. And especially when you have a chance to make catches. Like, oh my God, this is my shot. I'm the primary here. Like, I got to get the ball. I got to catch it. Like, you can't play football well that way. And Dan talked about that on Friday, saying, like, this is probably going to happen. And our message to the guys is, like, just relax and play. Like, we know what you can do. Like, now go show it. Because he wants them to play well. He wants to judge them based off of their best. And then, sure enough, on Sunday, the first half, they're tighter than hell. And DQ goes in at halftime, and he's like, hey, broskies, just play. And that message was then relayed via the press conference afterwards so that we all know that it happened. And sure enough, in the second half, the talent obviously evens out. You got the end of the Patriots roster versus the end of the Commanders, and you saw how that went as opposed to the Commanders' backups hanging very well with the Patriots starters. But you also just have guys playing looser, playing faster, playing more physical. There's a different crispness to the second half of that game for Washington in all fronts. And Cole Turner's one of those guys. He goes out and makes that play that he maybe doesn't make in the first half. And so my question, my inability to process this, Anthony, is do they look at it as in that Cole Turner learned his lesson? If he just goes out and plays, he's going to be fine, and we think Cole Turner playing is really valuable to us? Or, hey, we told you guys, don't play tight, and you did anyway, and we can't trust you when the lights are on. And that's actually part of the evaluation. Who's a gamer and who's not? And I think that you could make an argument over the past couple of years that Cole Turner's just not a gamer. He's a dude who plays pretty well in practice a lot.
Yep.
And then in the games, you got critical mistakes. And that's multiple years running. And so I don't know what to make of that. If they think they can coach that out of him, and, I do think that's something that is coachable, by the way, right? Like there is some of it, some people that have it supernaturally, you're always just going to be able to rely on in a way that's different. But I do think for more fringe type guys, if you can give them the tools they need to feel confident, that actually is one of the arts of coaching. So I do think it's possible. And if they think they can do that to Cole Turner and it's worth it, okay. I would probably just rather look at Colson Yankoff and be like, this dude's been a gamer consistently. He's still getting better. He's super raw, but he's actually not that far different from Cole Turner right now. I know he can't grow. And Cole Turner's ginormous, and they're different body types in that way. So that is points to Cole Turner. But I don't know what to make of that. The fact that Dan Quinn kind of called his shot, Turner is the walking epitome of it. And then what do they do with that information? I have no idea how they see that.
Yeah, I mean, Dan and Cliff both already understand that, tight end, safety, those two positions are the toughest to monitor right now. So I think the preseason finale was an indictment of that. I think after halftime, if they just assess Cole's play after that, then, he'll be in good standing. But again, you necessarily can't trust it if, you're tight, the first half, and I got to tell you, loosen up. Like,
right. We can't be doing that once we get in the regular season. We need you to just play.
Yeah.
I need you to come off. All of a sudden, Zach needs a blow, and we're in a 2 tight end set on a 3rd down, and this is something we want to, the tight end's one of the primaries. I can't hesitate on the play call because I'm like, shoot, I don't know if Turner's going to, psych himself out. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened to Cole Turner. Cole Turner might be listening right now. Hi, Cole. And being like, that's not how my brain works, guys. Like, I hate you. You're dumb radio people. And like, okay, fine. But DQ said it about someone, and it certainly seemed like Turner was one of those guys that fit the bill. Mm-hmm. And it's been, again, multiple years where in game it just hasn't been as good. It hasn't been as productive. There's been big mental blocks, mental mistakes. So for whatever the reason is, you can't, as Cliff Kingsbury, be like, oh, shoot, I don't know if I can trust Turner here on a big 3rd down in week 3 where Ertz, he's run 2 vertical routes in a row and needs a blow and it's 3rd down. Like, I can't have that. And so I don't know what they do there. All right, last but not least.
Number 6.
We had Tariq Castro-Fields. We kind of said it's Castro-Fields, it's Chigozie Anusium, and those 2 guys at corner are battling with Defoe at safety. And for Castro-Fields versus Anusium, advantage TCF. Anusium had a couple of rookie moments. I think he's 100% on the practice squad. Like, they like his physicality. They like his size. He just needs more polish. He was an undrafted free agent for a reason. You think of the 2-minute drill. Chig is in coverage on the sideline. Like, you have to make a tackle and keep a guy in bounds. And instead, he whiffs. Guy gets extra yardage and gets out of bounds. Like, those are the kinds of things that, unfortunately, are the margins between making a team and not. While Castro-Fields, he's got a couple balls that kind of go over his head to receivers that are overthrows, but you're in good phase there. Like, you're not that far from the receiver. You're forcing a tough throw over you that's got to be a perfect drop in the bucket. Like, that's actually not bad coverage. And some of those are even second reaction plays where May breaks the pocket and is throwing down the field. What I don't know is on the big touchdown that got called back because the Patriots are incapable of lining up correctly, where Defoe winds up being the last guy back there. Like, I don't think that's Defoe's guy. I think he's coming from a middle 3rd safety, and I want to know who blew coverage on that side. So if that was Castro-Fields, that's obviously not going to help his case. But he's also been a good special teams player. I think he probably winds up making the roster, but I'm also open to other ideas, including someone who hasn't been in Washington for the entirety of the offseason, Anthony.
Who have you looked at? Oh, are you talking about just picking somebody up off the waivers?
Yeah, waiver wire.
Oh,
I wasn't saying anyone in
I'm
particular.
like, hold on now.
I wasn't saying any. Was there someone that Stephon Gilmore got signed, so.
Yeah, he did get signed.
That would have been theoretically.
Wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say real quickly about that, I'll just tag this on the end here. I think the way they've approached free agents is different because they know it's a developmental year, right? If you're trying to win this year, are you a better football team with Stephon Gilmore than you are without Stephon Gilmore? Yeah, even with he's not in his prime anymore, but I think he's better than what they've got. Certainly better down the depth chart than what they've got. However, you're trying to figure out how good you got it right now. You're trying to get Forbes reps. You're trying to get BSJ reps. And because of that, if you bring Gilmore in, they can't play. And so in this year where they're trying to figure out exactly what they need for next year, they need to actually do the figuring out. And so if they were 3 years from now and we're talking about, hey, we're a little thin at corner, but we think if we can get it straightened out, we're a Super Bowl contender or we're an NFC East division contender, then you go sign Stephon Gilmore. This year, when the more important question is not can we win the division, but is Emmanuel Forbes good? Is he an NFL player? Is BSJ worth re-signing? Then you can't afford to give those snaps to a veteran. And frankly, Gilmore might also have not been interested, right? There's always that possibility that he wants to go to a contender. But that's where we're at, I think, with some of the rep distribution and some of the positions where it feels like they maybe could have been more aggressive in free agency. And they have a bunch of young guys they're trying to figure out. You got to do the figuring out and give those young players space to figure it out.
Nah, I definitely agree.
All right. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, why has the NFL de-emphasized the preseason so much? Logan and I discussed this morning on Take Command. We share it with you next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And the preseason has become quite de-emphasized in the NFL. And that was actually, I think, one of the more interesting things that we talked about today on the Take Command podcast, which is out now in full. We did a solid 30 minutes of analysis of I won't call it a meaningless, but a de-emphasized preseason game in terms of who we thought helped themselves and not. And you can check that out starting at the top of the hour because, well, then our show will be over. And I prefer you to listen to this show while it's live because that's good for my job security. Speaking of job security. But why has it become so de-emphasized? That's where we started Take Command podcast, and it was a really interesting conversation with Logan Paulson, so we want to share it with you here on the Hoffman Show.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan and former reporter Craig Hoffman.
Monday morning on Take Command. The season has finished on Sunday Night Football. The Commanders won 20-10. That's cool. Winning is better than winning. Yeah. But Logan Paulson, we are not going to talk a whole lot about the specifics of the game because I would hope that's obvious to everyone listening why we're not going to talk about so much of the specifics of game breakdowns, no inside third down, this or that. We will, obviously, as we get going here, on players that perhaps made or cost themselves in terms of the roster. But there's a couple of bigger picture things we wanted to talk about first here on Take Command to frame that discussion. And we'll talk about, in a moment, Logan, weighting last night's game versus the other games versus what we've seen in practice. And that's going to obviously shape, trying to is going to do in terms of, oh, hey, that guy had a great camp, but a bad finish. What does that mean? So we'll get into that in a moment. I wanted to start even bigger than that, Logan, as we wrap yet another NFL preseason where fewer and fewer teams are really treating this, the public-facing games, if you will, the ones that are on television opposed to the joint practices, et cetera, with any level of competitiveness, seriousness. And serious isn't the exact right word because it's serious for the guys that are out there. It's serious for the coaches while it's happening. But clearly they are not valuing the preseason the way that it was, even when you were playing, nevertheless, how it was 25 years ago. And this kind of hit me hard last night when I got a tweet from, I think it's at DC Pack, who was like, Emmanuel Forbes. My first instinct was to be like, because haven't you none of the starters are playing, and Emmanuel's a very his team. And then I was like, you want to know what? It's actually a valid question than that, because Emmanuel's a young player who's they're trying to get more reps, and this is an opportunity to get reps, especially with New England playing their ones last night. And they didn't do that for basically anybody of their starters. 34 players not playing last night. I'd say 34 all are going to make the team. And yet they don't think any of them could use the extra rep. Don't want to risk the injury, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just curious for you, Logan, to kind of kick us off here. Like, what do you like? Is this a missed opportunity that teams, not just the Commanders but league wide, are missing, or is preseason actually not that valuable? And maybe there's a reason why teams are doing it this way more and more.
I mean, I think preseason is extremely valuable. I think when you look at the first two games specifically, I think you see kind of the reactions coming out of those games and the questions in the media and the answers and the responses. I think that was the first time we kind of got sniffs of like, Jahan maybe wasn't meeting the standard. And that happened in a preseason game. And obviously that's reflective of what we were seeing in practice, but that's an important element, right? When guys get on the field, it looks a little bit different. It feels a little bit different. And you see that in the preseason games. I think also with the Emmanuel Forbes stuff, like coming out of that, kind of how he was able to refill the week in Miami. I think all that stuff, the genesis of that is the joint practice with the Jets and then the preseason game. So I think it is valuable. I think it's just what using it for. A lot of fans think, like everyone playing all the time. And that's kind of what this team did last year. And I don't know if there's a huge benefit to doing that. If you've gotten what you've needed to get out of it, then, and I think with the 3-game structure and the bye week leading into the season, I think every team is handling it a little bit differently. So, for example, like Carolina, any of their starters until the third preseason game. And so they're like they're ramping third preseason game. And then they go. The same thing with New England, right? You kind of ramp, everyone plays, and then you have that bye week and go from there. So I think it's more of a preference thing. And I think some people are treating it as they would a traditional preseason. But if you think about it, the third game was the game that you'd be really getting after it. And then the bye week would be the next week. So I think it's just preference. I think it's just style. I think it's just, for this team, it seems like they use it as an evaluation tool. And once the evaluation and they're kind of finalized, they prioritize the safety of the roster and playing things close to the vest. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though, the concept of like, oh, is the preseason just an evaluation tool or is it a preparation tool? Like, is this something that gets you ready for the season in a way that you can't in practice or that enhances what you're doing in practice? And I think the disconnect between maybe where the league is and where fans are is the game planning element of it.
Yeah.
That you are actually getting less out of season games. I know that might sound crazy, and I think it might also be position specific too, though, because like you don't get a chance to practice in tackling to the ground, real tackling, other human beings who are trying to make you miss tackles in practice. Like you practice stability or tackling stability, dummies and pads, and you rally to the ball, but you don't actually finish. It's just different. And so defensively, I could see like, hey, I want to go chance to practice making some tackles. But I think the lack of specificity in the plan means the mental preparation side, it's not reminiscent of what you see during a regular season game. And thus it's like the quality of practice and thus the return, or the quality of pressure and thus the return on the investment of time is not worth the risk of injury. And I know that's frustrating for fans because you want to see your guy, like you want to see, hey, how's this guy coming along? Or I just want to watch this guy ball because I'm a fan. And that's, what fandom is. But I also understand it from the team side. And it seems like more and more teams are leaning that way. And the more teams that do it, the more valid it becomes, because you don't get what the Commanders had for an opportunity last night, which was actually playing against New England's ones. Like that could have been more valuable than playing, obviously they're 2s and 3s. But you're still not getting any kind of game plan stuff. So I have to just like defer to you and defer to people and realize the gap is between specific type of offense defense that you're playing against versus vanilla versions, because oh my god, they are very vanilla. I don't know if there's a way to like quantify it so that folks can understand the difference in preparation level against a season offense versus like a regular season offense if you're a defensive player.
Yeah, I mean, defense or offense, it's the same thing. What I think they've done here, teams do this, especially with new coaching staffs, is you kind of put your vanilla offense in. So one reason you do, because you want to make sure that you're playing all your cards close best. You make sure that you're allowing the athlete on the field to play fast and flesh out your evaluation. We just talked about that. But as a player, I will tell you the most anxiety-giving thing in terms of preparation is not who you're playing on the field. It's unscouted looks. It is a nightmare. Because so much of what you do in the NFL is you watch film, you find the they run, you find the they bring, you understand the patterns of combinations, you understand this look with this tight end set, they run this run. But when you're going up against an opponent, especially week 1, I remember being so stressed, like watching film from 3 years prior of a coordinator trying to figure out like what they might be doing, reading camp reports. Like this is me with coaches, like we'd read camp reports and be like, oh, they seem to be in a 3-4. It's like, oh, that's a depart from what they did in 2017 or what, what I'm saying? It just, yeah. And so I think this schematic advantage of showing stuff is almost possible to like quantify. We have an idea of what Joe Witt Jr. is doing, but even what he's done in preseason is drastically different from what he showed in practice. And I'm pretty sure what he showed in practice is even farther removed from what he showed in joint. So the version of the defense you're seeing is like literally the bare bones. Now, what you're saying in terms of preparation, it's an extremely valuable preparation tool. Like in the sense that like putting on heads, going through the warm-up, it sets the table for the season in a way that nothing else in the preseason does. Like nothing preseason does. And so I do think that there is value there. Now, in terms of saying we want to really see how this cover 3 beater works against the New England Patriots ones. It's not real. It's not real until it's the game, because they're not running it the way they're going to. They don't have all their checks in. They game plan their cover 3 to match you. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not until the game planning becomes involved, it's not NFL. It's a preparation tool, an evaluation tool for the guys. And I think there's an element of, like, you talk about, like, we talk about, like, physical preparedness because of the strength stuff that we do on the side. The preseason is an elevation of the offseason. It goes practice, joint practice, preseason game, because you're going against somebody and it's as close to 100% as you can. So I think that it's important for those things, but the team, they're not going to show you everything. They're going to play it really tight because it is so important for success in the regular, especially early on.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing that I was curious about is like how much of a physical preparation, practicing, even side versions of the mental reads, I guess. So the mental as well. That could you get in a preseason setting versus a regular season? And it sounds like it's actually not that much. And I guess really it's not even not that much. It's the difference between that and practice isn't that much. And at that point, what kind of risk you want to take where there are tackles to the like randomness into it if you're not actually going to get that much sharper. And also I think, last night was interesting because you had guys, the snap counts aren't up yet because we're recording this thing and the game didn't end or whenever it ended. I don't know. I watched the second half back this morning because I sure as heck didn't watch that full thing. I know you were, so
I was there. Yeah.
I got a text from you at 2 a.m. about the podcast today, which I read at 7 a.m. when I woke up this morning. So I know it went pretty late. But point is, like, if we're talking about reps for some guys or 15 reps for some guys, maybe 30, 40, like how much are those 30, 40 reps even valuable over the hundreds of reps that you've stacked in training camp? And at that point, when you look at kind of the scope and size and relativity of all of that, I don't know that you're actually going to be able to move the needle that. And at that point, you're getting into the risk reward game. And I think the other thing too, later in the preseason, because like the Carolina example, I think is really interesting because my strength coach goes, I would rather ramp into the season. If I have someone who gets hurt earlier in camp or earlier in the preseason, I have more time to go find something else or work out a trade or whatever. If something happens to you, like if God forbid Jacoby Brissett was, they said ultimately like have gone back into the game last night, like he gets knocked out, it would just be like, okay, Drake May's our starting quarterback, but then do you go find another backup? Do you want to bring like a lot of time to do that? If it happens in the first week of camp or the first preseason game, you have more. So that is the explainer as to why I think that where they have more time to come up with plan B versus, oh crap, cuts her to find someone on the waiver wire.
No, 100%. And again, I think it's a little bit, people are trying to figure out the right way, the right path. There is no right answer because, like you said, from a physiological standpoint, you want to ramp it into this, right? Kind of have that bye week, get right, and then get rock and rolling. But I think a lot of people look at it and what's coming to players. Like I remember I was talking to Fletch last night on the radio. I was like, would you like to, not play early and then play the one before, like play this third game? And what he's comfortable with is playing early in the preseason. He's like, no, I don't want to play the week 2 and then take week 3 off. And again, like there's a psychological element to this, and I think like there's a psychological element for the coaches as well too. Like I'm just comfortable with doing it this way because we've done it this way, since preseason was invented. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of we've done it, right? It was, a little bit for game, like a quarter in the second game, you're off for the fourth game, and I think there's like a rhythm to that for players mentally. And I think maybe as we get longer into this 3-game preseason structure, I think it'll change. As we'll say,
it's going to change because it ain't going to be for that much longer. They're going to go to games, which will be fascinating
wild.
in its own right.
Yeah, which is wild. But that's what you'll see is something. I think you'll see people fiddle with it, just as they fiddle with the practice structure. And I think I can hear fans saying, because I've had this conversation with one of the producers on the shows I was about how insulated and protected the players are But ultimately, like this, just trying to knock the rust off. Like I consult with a guy for a different team, and one of the things he's like, oh, like I don't care how much rust off. Just make sure that I'm in a game setting, tackling, I'm on the ground, I'm off. It's a little bit different of intensity. I can finish a block in a preseason game, and no one's going to say pooey to Mike. So I'll get a hearty hand clasp and good job. If you finish a block in, you're going to get cussed out because you're trying to protect your team, right? So I think there is a little bit different intensity to a preseason game, which again is like it's instead of having to climb a mountain, you just kind of take it, like climbing Everest. You take it to base camp 1, base camp 2, base camp. This is what this is. So I think this is. I know fans want a more intense, use every opportunity to prepare. There's a risk reward element here because the advantage of keeping stuff the best because of the health and wellness of your team. Like if you look at the teams that win the Super Bowl every year, you're working through the season there. So if you can set yourself up to be in that area, you give yourself a shot. So all of these things are in the goal of winning the Bowl, and it's just kind of what you prefer. But don't get it twisted. The preseason is valuable, but it's valuable maybe for what fans think it's valuable. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. I think that's fair for sure. Or I think fans, because fans are not a monolith, Logan. I don't know.
It's true. Yeah, that was different. I shouldn't have said it like that. That I've talked to maybe don't
for sure.
But
I think for some people that are not in the league, there is 100% correct in terms of it's not what you think it's for. I think for others, it is exactly what you think it's for. You just might not get the value, the return on it, if you will, that you do, and that kind of mitigates the need to actually participate in it. So then, how does Adam Peters name the roster, and how did all the players who actually did play last night help or hurt themselves? That's the rest of Take Command, which is available on demand for you and your favorite podcast platform. We wrap up the Hoffman Show quickly next.
It's time.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Anthony, you said we have one thing in the real things folder. I'm gonna see how good is. Oh, I definitely want to play this, but I don't want to do it in a day that we're rushed. We're kind of rushed. Magic Johnson responding to Anthony Edwards. Delightful. I did, by the way. So I just want to wrap up a couple of stories from the weekend / the show. One of our calls from last week, we posted up on social, and it went viral on TikTok. I know something went viral on TikTok if Anthony sends me my own TikTok. That's what I know, like 100,000 views, that's whatever. When Anthony sends me my own TikTok, I'm like, damn, that thing really made it.
I don't even use TikTok, so the fact that I got the TikTok,
someone sent it to you.
Yeah, somebody sent it to me.
Nice.
That's
what we're talking about.
I don't even use TikTok, but and this is part of the reason I don't use TikTok. I found myself on TikTok for a good 15, 20 minutes just swiping up, looking through videos. So that's why I don't get on TikTok, because it's so addictive. They just have so many.
Their algorithm's good. Their algorithm's good. I'm not going to lie. It'll suck you in. But what I was going to say is, so for some reason, the YouTube comments get to me sometimes where I'm like, I'm in it and I'm emotionally. TikTok comments, I just laugh at mostly. I don't get too deep into the weeds. Like, it's much more of an emotionally removed experience for me. And so there was one comment that really made me chuckle, because also when something goes viral like that on TikTok, I literally can't keep up. And we've had a couple go like that on YouTube Shorts too, or whatever, and it's hard to keep up with the comments. All of a sudden, I click on something. I'm like, oh, we have 200 comments. I like to read a lot of comments. That's too many. But on TikTok, when something goes viral, like, we're talking like probably thousands of comments, and I can't respond to them. So, but I'll see like some of the more recent ones. And someone who didn't like the Dotson trade was like, where's Magic Johnson at? How are we going to let his team burn? And I'm like, man, you really don't understand how any of this works, do you?
Oh, man, they thought Magic was about to be the savior?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, Anthony.
Yeah.
Interesting. The other thing, if you've been listening all show long, God bless you. We mentioned in the first break of the show, almost had a disaster in segment 2 today. So like most companies with at least decent, if not superior security practices, our company, Odyssey, cares a lot about, the internal security of all the files and all the things, of course. And so on an employee basic human level, you have to change your password every quarter, basically. And so I changed mine over the weekend because I had to, and I logged in accidentally with my old password, and it still worked on our computer today. But then it was like, hey, wait a second, we need new login credentials. So in the first break, I went to go like log out, log back in, and it locked me out. Like, our engineer, thank God, shout out to our guy Tom, was able to fairly quickly unlock my account. And thank God the stream didn't crash. My notes didn't crash. We were almost in a really, really bad way, Anthony.
Yeah, those are the days I hate. Those are the days you see me frustrated over here, because I'll log in over there, and then as soon as I come into the studio, boom, I can't even get into my account for like 5 to 10 minutes.
I don't know how it let me in with my old password to begin with.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
But I'm like, okay. And then I was like, Tom, which one do I log in with? Do I log in with the new password, or do I log in with the old password? He's like, the new one. And I was like, cool. And now we're here. And it still wants me to log in again for some reason, but I was like, I'm not falling for your tricks twice, Windows. So we're gonna shut everything down. We're gonna log it out, and we're gonna come back tomorrow. We'll promise we'll get back to real things tomorrow as well. And we'll have the roster 4 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late.